Hey everyone, welcome back to Nia Natters. This is episode 10, and today we're going to be talking about the road to resilience, how to bounce back from life's challenges. So, how this podcast will be structured is that we will introduce the topic of resilience, and then we'll go through the key traits of resilient people, how to build resilience if you haven't got those in place yet, turning failures into learning opportunities, and just recap on everything that we've discussed during this podcast. So to begin with, I'm going to do a definition of resilience, and this is the ability to adapt and overcome challenges or bounce back from difficult situations. So when I think of this, I think that resilience is really critical for success and for happiness. For example, if you had a goal, a specific goal, and then people around you were like, oh, you're never going to be able to accomplish that goal. That goal is too far-fetched. Why are you even thinking like that? Just bring your brain back down to earth and forget about that goal. If you were not a resilient person, you could think and hear that and say, oh yeah, they're right. Why am I even thinking about this? Why do I even think this is achievable in my lifetime? It's definitely not. I'm just going to forget it and move on and become unsatisfied because I'm not working towards something I really want. And in turn, that would make you sad and think about the purpose of your life when the purpose would have been that goal that you had set. However, a resilient person would have heard that and thought, well, you're not in charge of me. I've got goals set out to achieve this future that I want so that I have the best possible chance of achieving it. And I know in my brain that I will find a way to be successful, and I'm thinking positively towards this goal so that it has a higher likeliness of happening because I'm open to more options as a result. And also, I am maintaining happiness because I don't care what other people think. I'm just doing it for myself. So that is why resilience is really important, because it dictates everything that you're willing to achieve out of your own motivation compared to what others are saying around you, and also how you respond to what others are saying in terms of the goal that you're trying to achieve. When I think of resilience in myself, I think about when I completely derailed my career choices and where I wanted to be in life. So as you all know, ever since I was little, I always wanted to be a vet. And all through school, I did really well up until my A-levels. In my GCSEs, they were completely fine for me to go forward, study what I needed to. In my A-levels, I visited the college that I wanted to go to in an open day. I loved it. I was so excited. And then my GCSEs came. I'd passed them all. I did a really good job. And then came the A-levels. I derailed myself because I was hanging around with the wrong people in the first year of my A-levels, which caused me to fail, lose hope, and just think, oh my gosh, what now? So thankfully, my dad was like, please go back. Well, he didn't say please. He said, you better get back up that school on your knees and beg for them to take you back, because at that point I'd moved from my school where I did my GCSEs to a college to do my A-levels. So I asked the school to take me back, took classes, and really tried hard, but unfortunately my A-level results were not enough to get me into that college. However, off the back of that, I found an interest in Asia history and also language. So I went and did an Asia degree majoring in Korean. And you're probably thinking, where are you going with this in terms of going back to wanting to be a vet and having horses and animals? Well, I then found out that I didn't like my degree because I'm not good at history, I'm not good at geography, and the language was okay. However, I had an amazing time in university. I passed with first class honours, but then I made the important decision in the third year of that degree to incorporate a business module so that I can make the transition over to a master's in business strategy and entrepreneurship. So I did that. I went into my master's, graduated with a distinction, first class again, and then I worked in a bank, and I still work in a bank at the moment. And once again, I'm still not at my goal, but I've never forgotten my goal of wanting horses and wanting dogs and wanting that type of life, not in the city, being self-employed. I've just come to terms with, instead of being an equine vet, I will just be something that earns enough money for me to have my own horses anyway. And I think that will come with what I'm doing in my current life now, which is really trying hard to build my own brand and earn money from it so that I can become self-employed and have the life that I've always dreamed of. But this doesn't mean that just because it's not happening right now, that I'm willing to lose it. I know what I want. I can see it clearly in my brain, and people do say like, oh, you're very optimistic about what you can achieve in your life, seeing as this is where you are right now. But number one, I've adapted to the situation. I know that it's not a clear enough road as it could have been. I try and remain optimistic despite people saying, oh, you are trying to live a life that is quite far out of your reach. And number three, I'm always emotionally regulated, not all of the time, but when it comes to my career choices and my next step in life, I make sure that I'm regulated enough to really deeply think everything over and come out with the best solution for my current situation. I think this ties quite well into the key traits of resilient people. So I literally just highlighted the most important ones, which are adaptability, optimism, and emotional regulation. So the importance of having adaptability as a key trait when being resilient is because, like I mentioned in my story just now, you don't know what life is going to throw at you. You don't know if you're going to achieve the thing that you want to achieve straight away. And in turn, you don't know what obstacles are going to be in your way to prevent those things from happening, and that they'll make you work harder for what you want. I know that a lot of people would, maybe take that as a sign as, oh, obviously this life is not meant for me. But I think that, in my opinion, call me spiritual or whatever you want to call me, but I think life has a weird way of leading you to and away from the things that you are or are not meant to have at that time. So I just think that if I'm not meant to have it now, there's a reason for me to be able to get it later when I'm more prepared and better adapted at the life that is needed to have that goal. So like I said, sometimes there's not one clear road to there, but that doesn't mean that you can have a look at other options and other paths to get to the same outcome. It might be a windy road. It might not be a straight road that you can see everything that's coming, but that's the journey of life and the importance of also living along the way to achieving your goal. I could say that where I am now I could have done years and years ago, because technically I have two other people wasted my time, because I went to university for 2 degrees that have not come up as useful in my life at the moment. But the people that I met and have kept close on my way through university have really shaped me as a person, and I really don't think that the way that it would have went if I hadn't have gone to uni, I wouldn't be this person, and I wouldn't have taken the actions that I have to come to the conclusions that I have to get this far in life, if that makes sense. And then moving on to optimism as well. So resilient people obviously have to be optimistic, because you can't be resilient without ideally or essentially ignoring someone when they say something that you don't want to hear about your goal or an outcome that you would like to achieve, such as, oh, you can't get that because you're not even on the right career path to achieve that. To be honest, that's none of their business, and you might have a plan, therefore adaptability, to write yourself on the right path to be able to achieve that, but they just don't know that because they're not in your brain. They don't know what your plan is, they don't know what your intentions are, and they don't know what you're capable of. They can just guess based on what they've seen you do thus far in their time of knowing you. And I think being optimistic is definitely one of the things that has kept me going and kept me around the right people, because I've always been optimistic in my life about achieving things that I want to achieve. And even now, well, actually 8 years ago when I got my first car, I was intent on having this specific car. I wanted a white Volkswagen Up with 5 doors, and yeah, that's it. And my mum rang me and was like, well, we can't find any white Ups around here with 5 doors, will you have a red one? And I was sat there and I was like, no, I want a white one. Okay, what about a 3-door that's white? No, I want a white one with 5 doors. And I didn't back down. I just held on and sat with it until a white Up with 5 doors came along and someone was willing to go and get it for me, and I still got that car. And I'm so glad that I didn't settle, because it's been the best car ever in the 8 years that I've owned it. And it's kind of the same with the house that we're buying at the moment. I will do whatever I need to do to get this house, and nothing is comparable to this house, and I don't want anything else. I'm very firm with my choices. Call me stubborn, call me I don't know what, high maintenance, whatever you like, but I just think that if you want something, good on you, and go and grip onto that thing that you want really hard until you get it. Nothing else should be comparable to the thing that you want, and nothing should ever replace it until you've got it. And in terms of emotional regulation, which is kind of the same as optimism in a way, but in terms of being emotionally aware enough to know that I'm not going to back down. This is what I want. I'm going to get it no matter what. And just keep rolling with that. And people can't break down your emotional barriers with this topic. And secondly, having emotional regulation is really good because you can take time away to step back and think, am I on the right path? Is this where I want to be? Is this going to benefit me? Do I need to do anything in between here and my next step to prepare me for the next step, to make me better? Is there any qualifications that I need to move over into the correct career trajectory? And that's all about really using your emotions to become more objective in this space, so that you know that you're making the right decisions for yourself, and so that you can become resilient enough to achieve the things you want out of life. I think, and this is just me talking now, but I think people don't realize how difficult something is to achieve. And this is where emotional regulation comes in as well, because sometimes it is overwhelming, and sometimes you do feel like the thing that you want is completely hopeless. But at the end of the day, you can achieve it if you work hard enough. However, not many people are willing to work this hard, which is why they'll turn around and say to you, oh, that's completely unachievable. Why would you even think about doing that? And it might be unachievable to them because they're not resilient enough to get that type of life, but they have also given up too soon because maybe they're not willing to be adaptable, they're not optimistic about it enough, or they're too emotional and they can't regulate themselves in the way that it's required to be able to achieve this goal. So these traits can be cultivated over time with intention and practice. And this could look like, in terms of adaptability, open your mind and think about the things that you could do instead of this one path that you're considering. When I go into anything now, I think of at least 3 to 5 possible ways of doing something. I never ever go into doing something, and this is where emotional regulation comes in as well. I never go into something and think, this is the only way I can do it. If there's only one way that you can do something, you better work your absolute butt off to get that one way. Otherwise, there's probably endless amounts of ways to do things. And if there is only one way of doing something, you better sit back and think about how much you want this or how worth your while this one thing is. So next we're going to be going on to building resilience, and I feel like I'm literally repeating the same methods in every single episode, but it's so true. These practices are so important to do in every way of life. So the first one we're going to talk through is mindset shifts. So focusing on growth over setbacks. You can do this in terms of habit tracking, like we said before in probably the previous podcast, and I also have one just specifically to discuss about habits. But you can have like a habit tracker, track how many days of the week you work on this goal and building a habit about it. And that gives you, especially if you're a visual person like me, that gives you something pleasing and aesthetic to watch grow as you go through your days. And this really kind of goes well with the optimistic side of things, where you are focusing on your growth rather than setbacks. Instead of saying, oh, look at this tracker, I haven't done the goal or worked on the goal 5 days this month. Instead of saying, oh, looking at this tracker, I've completed this goal 25 days out of 30, which is 5/6. That's so good. That is so good. Like, why are you focusing on the negative? You know, and in order to also shift your mindset, you need this also goes into adaptability as well. It kind of goes into all of them, to be honest, but to adapt, you need to focus on the different ways that you can achieve something. Like the saying, not a pleasing saying, but it is a true saying. There's more than one way to skin a cat, I think is the saying. And that's so true, because there's always more than one path to get something, on getting what you want anyway. To achieve a goal, there's always more than one way to do something. And that means that you can focus on growth by analysing the different methods on how to achieve the goal, by looking at all the different paths that are currently available to you, or you can make available to you. There's the optimism. Over time. Even if that's, oh, at the moment I can only see this path, but if I spent a bit of money and time studying on this qualification, that could also be an option for me. Is how far you're willing to go for this thing. And with me, I want to go and get my finance qualification, my accounting qualification. At the moment, I'm looking at different methods of getting that, whether it's through another job, my current job, paying for it myself, and I will make these 3 options work to get what I want. So really focusing on your growth over setbacks will literally shift your mindset to a positive way of thinking, which means that you're better adapted to any setbacks that might come with maybe one path that is leading to your goal, and then you just hop over. I think of them as like train tracks. Once again, I'm a very visual person. I think of all of the options that I have as train tracks side by side, and then when one doesn't work, I just hop over to the next train track and see how far along I can get with that one, and then I'll hop over again, because you still covered some of the journey on this train track that you're on, closer to your goal. It's not like you're going along this train track and then have to reverse the train all the way back to the beginning to hop over. No, you can hop over. They're side by side when you need them. You've learnt something, you're smarter, or you're more aware or knowledgeable than you were when you started, because you're considering different methods and you know better how to get there, what you have to be prepared to do, things like that. And then the next one is coping strategies. So you can use journaling, therapy, mindfulness to process emotions. So this is to do with emotional regulation and probably optimism as well. And adaptability. So for example, journaling, you can write down all the different pathways to get somewhere, and what's not working, what's working, what the blocks are, how you can potentially achieve success despite the blocks being there. There's also journaling that you can do for optimism, saying, oh, people are saying this, but why are they saying this? Why did this affect me and make me feel pessimistic? What can I do to feel more optimistic despite what people are saying? Really work on yourself. As always, I always consider or suggest the shadow questions that you can find on Pinterest, which are always helpful because you can always find questions on there that make you reflect on yourself and really think about what it is that you can improve on yourself to make people's opinions feel less important to you. And then thirdly, journaling is also good for processing emotions, like I just said, because you could feel a certain way about something. Maybe it's because of the lack of adaptability, or maybe it's because of the lack of optimism that you feel, or maybe that something is just really tough at the moment and you don't know how to cope with it. However, by writing these things down, you can really objectively and become more objectively see what it is that's affecting you so deeply, when taking into consideration the situation you have at hand. Next is therapy or mindfulness. So therapy would definitely be one if you can't be objective about yourself. So if you're finding it hard to be adaptable, maybe it's something that yourself needs to work on first before you can see the other parts. Maybe you have a really deep-rooted opinion on something that just isn't allowing you to move past your mindset to feel that your thoughts are more open about being adaptable, if that makes sense. Or maybe you grew up and so your optimism is not something that comes to you naturally, so that you need to work on that. And same with emotional regulation. Maybe you're over emotional, I certainly am, but in terms of this type of things, I'm really not. And there's the importance of finding out why you're so emotional and how to regulate it so that it will benefit you in terms of being able to achieve your goals, seeing things clearer, and then in turn not caring about what people think and becoming more adaptable again. It's the same with mindfulness. It's kind of similar to journaling and therapy, but it's I feel like journaling always happens after the situation has passed, and therapy is also after the situation has passed, but mindfulness can occur in the moment. So when you're not being very adaptable, and let's just say you're having a conversation with someone and someone's like, well, you want the same thing as me, so this is what I did to get to the next step, and then you could be sat there thinking, oh, why are they telling me this as if it's so easy? And then you could be like, wait, I need to be mindful at the moment, take a step back. Why do I feel like this is impossible, and why am I acting this way in terms of not being very adaptable in the situation? I asked for help. Why am I acting like this? It could also be the same with optimism. So jump into the defensive maybe when talking about the likeliness of something happening. And another thing could be that the other person that you're talking to could be like, oh, well, you'll never achieve that. And then you suddenly go into a sudden panic of, oh, maybe they're right. And then you just gotta think, wait, why am I suddenly thinking that just because someone told me something that they're completely right and this thing is unachievable that I want so badly? And that kind of leads into emotional regulation. Being able to regulate your own emotions, to not lean so much on the opinions of others, is very important in terms of adaptability and optimism. And that's why when you're feeling a certain way especially, it is important to take a step back and think, is this rational, or am I just jumping to conclusions based on the situation, based on how adaptable I am, or based on what the other person said that makes me second guess myself? Thirdly in terms of building resistance, there is also the topic of support systems, so the role of community and asking for help. This one is kind of things that I just touched on. So, for example, it would be therapy, speaking to others about your situation, such as family, friends. Of course, most of the time you'd probably speak to your family and friends because they are more personal to you, they know you better, and they know what might work for you in terms of your personality and in terms of, let's just say, your attention span, your willpower. But if you do want an objective opinion, I highly suggest therapy or even coaching. Like I said before, I am a life coach, so if you ever would like to talk to someone about personal development in terms of career, goal setting, habits, routine, motivation, passion, purpose, check out my website, which is in the bio, in my bio. I keep saying in the bio, and that doesn't really make sense. However, what I'm not is I'm not a therapist. So there is a distinction between those two things. But yeah, I just think that asking for other people's opinions, I'm the type of person, funnily enough, I was talking about this the other day, I'm the type of person who will go into a situation fully locked and loaded with all of the information that I could possibly have received at that point from other people, because I want to be as prepared as possible and not make mistakes that other people have made before me, because to me the point of evolution is to prepare yourself in a way that encompasses all of the mistakes people have made before you so that you could have a better outcome, right? So I think it is really important to ask the opinions of other people. However, there's also the emotional regulation that comes in to be able to tell when someone is right or someone is helpful and someone is wrong or unhelpful. So let's just say that someone was like, oh, well, I've tried that route and I completely failed at it, so I don't recommend that you go down that route. And you might be like, okay, alright, it obviously isn't the way to go. I'm incapable of doing it, so I won't. And that could be the route for you, but your questions need answers before you completely disregard that route that is available to you, but someone's telling you not to go down. It could have been their fault. It could have been self-led. It could have been that they weren't prepared enough. It could have been that they themselves didn't ask for support around them and then went into that situation not knowing what was to come. There's always different things to consider, and that's why emotional regulation is so important in terms of adaptability and optimism, especially when you're going through or going down the path of asking others their opinion about the situation. And also, there is nothing wrong with asking for help, and I feel like a lot of people need to hear this, because asking for help sometimes is being adaptable. It's asking people to help you consider other methods and other paths of getting to the goal that you want. Asking for help can also be support for being optimistic, especially if you know that you're a person that isn't particularly optimistic about these types of situations. Then you need people who are willing to lift you up and be optimistic for you when you're not. And in terms of emotional regulation, like I said, therapy, coaching, friends and family that aren't going to tear you down, or objective friends and family, because there's always some, right? And then we can think about how to turn these failures into learning opportunities. So let's have a think of someone who failed but used it to succeed. One that is very close to my heart, I would say, is Walt Disney. In his career, he was fired from a newspaper job because he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine someone saying to Walt Disney that he lacked imagination and good ideas? I know some of the things that have been released in the past are probably not a good representation of the real situation. However, they're still widely watched around the world now. All the Disney movies, the cartoons, that's part of my childhood. So then Walt Disney's first animation company went bankrupt and then moved to Hollywood to start over, but Mickey Mouse was rejected by distributors. And then one of his characters was also stolen by Universal and left him with nothing. However, Walt Disney pioneered animated films with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and also built Disneyland, even when people were not behind him to support him. So he had to have the self-motivation, the self-optimism to keep going despite everyone else around him saying, oh, don't do it, like, there's no point, they're rubbish, you're rubbish, the ideas are rubbish, who would like that? And he was adaptable. He didn't always go down the right career path. If we think about it, the first path was him being fired from a newspaper job, so the newspaper job was 1. His first animation company was 2. That's 2 different tracks in his life. Then moving to Hollywood and being rejected on Mickey Mouse, that's 3. And then his character being stolen by Universal is 4. And then the 5th time, and this is the public ones or the main ones that we know about, that's the 5th track he had to move over to in order to be able to succeed. Like I keep saying, it's the adaptability that is the most important, because when you're closed-minded and you can only see one path in front of you, that's the only path that is open to you, or that you think is open to you. So that's the only path that will be open to you. If you get what I'm saying, if you can only see one path, there'll only ever be one path until you open your eyes and take a look around. So adaptability really is key. Walt Disney also had the optimism, so even when people doubted him, he still carried on. And he, even now, when he has passed, Disney is one of the most influential brands in entertainment history, and it is ever growing, and it grows on without him. And I suppose he would have had emotional regulation to take into consideration what his next step was, without being rash about it, thinking about what was best for him, and even when people let him down, told him that it wouldn't work, and when he saw no way forward on his current track, he had the emotional regulation to move across to the next track and start again there. Affirmations are also good to reframe failure as feedback instead of seeing it as a completely dead end as well. Is also a way to stay motivated, because if you have enough self-belief and positivity and optimism and emotional regulation and adaptability, then you will be completely fine. But it is also okay for some days to be not as good as others in terms of your optimism on a current situation. That happens to everyone. Like I keep saying, we're all human. It's all okay as long as you get back up eventually. But I will say one thing is that the more you work on your adaptability, optimism, and emotional regulation, the quicker each time you will be able to get up from falling down. So you will quickly achieve the goal that you set out to do because you have learnt how you work. Now it's your turn. Reflect on a challenge that you've overcome in your life and comment down below on what that challenge was and how you celebrated your resilience, if you do. Sometimes you might not even know that you have resilience. And also, think about one lesson that you've learned from a past challenge and how it shaped you as a person. As you can see, resilience is very important, especially when achieving goals and knowing where you want to go. Without it, I think that you would lose direction, lose confidence, or even consider that one path is the only path that you're able to achieve this goal with. But that it totally isn't true, taking into consideration what we just spoke about today. Make sure you practice your resilience, and if you have any other questions about resilience, then please drop a comment below. This is the end of my coaching type of podcasts now, so I hope you have enjoyed them, and if you did, then please leave a like on this video, consider subscribing, and consider checking out all of my other posts on this channel. I also have a gaming channel and a website that you can access in the channel bio above. And I think that's it, basically. I will see you all next time. I'm not even sure what I'll be doing in my next videos, but I do have a coaching corner section of my podcast now where I talk about different posts that I see on social media and how I would coach them if they had come to me with this question. And yeah, so please go and check that out. That will become a more prominent thing on my channel. But also leave a comment down below on what else you would like to see on this channel, and I will do my best to get that done for you. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Well, thanks for listening. Bye everyone.